Here is something that is crucial for writing clear, effective essays, clear, effective prose, using the active voice. The active voice. Do you know what I mean by the active voice? It's the opposite of the passive voice. The active voice is using strong, clear, active verbs rather than verbs that are buried in a sentence. Well, maybe I can explain this better with an example. The passive voice buries the verb and invariably and unnecessarily employs the verb to be. Active sentences locate the verb at the heart of the sentence. What does an English sentence look like? We can map it out. A subject. Shout out. Remember, a subject followed by a verb and an object of the verb. Every single sentence or clause, dependent or independent clause, follows this structure. This is what an English sentence looks like. Something, doing something, or doing something to something else. Okay? This is a good, strong sentence where we have the verb, you notice, is the heart of the sentence. It's the lifeblood of a sentence. It is the action of a sentence. Spatially, it actually conveys this notion of being the lifeblood. There it is. We'll put a little heart there. It beats and pumps and shows the relationships between the subject and the object of the verb. Okay? This is what a good sentence invariably must look like. A good active sentence. Now, here is an example of a passive structure. My brother is a manipulator of other people. My brother is a manipulator of other people. Grammatically, it's okay. It's fine. But it's passive, isn't it? What is the verb in this sentence? Is? In this sentence, is not manipulate, is it? It's my brother is. It's a fairly weak verb. And why? Because it's a passive verb. It's not an active verb. We want to change this, don't we? We want to get rid of the is and make this sentence beat, right, with a verb. What verb do we want to foreground here?
Manipulate.
Manipulate. So, how would we revise this to make this an active rather than a passive sentence? Instead of my brother is this, my brother does this. My brother manipulates people. We can see how less wordy this is too. It's more direct and it's also more active. And it's much more descriptive of the kind of person my brother is. In this particular instance. Though my brother's a lovely person. Here's another one, a longer one. A decision was made by the Action Committee for the Bishop Society of the Preservation of Architectural Aesthetics, BSBPAA, to bomb McKinnon Hall. This is a passive sentence, and yet we can see that this sentence is clearly an important one, isn't it? Because it's dealing with violence and active terrorism right here on our campus. And we all love McKinnon Hall, don't we? We would defend it to the last breath. So, how could we make this passive sentence an active one? What is the subject of this sentence? You can call that the BSBPAA for sure. Absolutely, that is the subject. So, should that not be at the beginning of our sentence? Yes, it should. So, the Action Committee, etc., is the subject. What is the predicate? What is the verb here? Decided. It's a bigger verb than that. Decided to bomb. Decided to bomb. Okay. The Action Committee decided to bomb McKinnon Hall, the object of the verb. We can see that that's a much more direct sentence. It, in fact, is now ascribing this decision to a real entity, the Action Committee for the Society of the Preservation of Architectural Aesthetics. But we actually have somebody doing something to something else, which is what an English sentence should look like, rather than a decision was made, as if it was a passive thing. And we know if you're going to bomb something, there's nothing passive about that at all, right? So the way we construct our sentences is important to the meaning and the emotion that we want to convey at the same time. What we do is we want to ascribe meaning to the person or the group in this case that is making the decision. Rather than this kind of government speak, we see this all the time when no one wants to assume responsibility for something, right?
Well,
what do? We get rid of the subject. We bury it in the sentence somewhere. And we say, a decision was made. And we never really know who made that decision because the subject of that sentence, the people or group making that decision, becomes grammatically lost in the sense of the sentence itself, in the passive voice. So watch out for the passive voice. And this is a particularly pernicious writing habit. We do this all the time, especially when we are not quite convinced of the truth of what we're saying, or even what we're saying at all. Okay, now here's another strategy for reducing wordiness, is basically taking what you have and cutting. Seems like a simple thing. The larger grammatical units into smaller grammatical units, without losing the sense of what it is you're trying to say. Cutting clauses to phrases, phrases to singular words. So here's an example. Which is a word which is really useful. And that sounds funny. Why? Because it's repetitious. I'm using the word which over and over again. How would we revise this? How would we get rid of an unnecessary phrase in this case? We could say directly,
which is a useful word.
Which is a useful word. Very simple, isn't it? Mary Kate bought the book, which was reputed to be steamy and sensational. We have this long phrase attached to Mary Kate bought the book, which was reputed to be steamy and sensational. We could say Mary Kate bought the reputedly steamy and sensational book. Okay, so do you want to say reputedly? It's up to you. Is the idea of reputation important for the sense of the sentence? Then yes, keep it. But modify it that way. Citizens who know what was going on voted him out of office. How would we revise that? Knowledgeable citizens voted him out of office who knew what was going on. It sounds a bit colloquial, it sounds a bit offhand, but knowledgeable citizens does the job very nicely, more directly, and carries that sense. Unencumbered by a sense of responsibility, Jason left his wife with 49 kids and a can of beans. What doesn't need to be there, or what can then be modified into something that is more direct?
Jason left his wife with 49 kids and a can of beans.
Yeah, that's it. That has to be here. Okay, absolutely. So we're going to keep that.
And then you could say Jason irresponsibly left his wife, etc.
Okay, we could do that. Jason irresponsibly left his wife. Do we even need to use the word irresponsibly in here? I don't think so. That is conveyed in leaving his wife with 49 kids. That's pretty irresponsible, isn't it? We know about him directly through his actions.
Right.
Though, of course, you could say he irresponsibly left, or even irresponsible Jason left his wife. The values, the ideas, the notions, the emotions, the thesis will always come through more directly in a more direct economical sentence than in one that tries to convey this sense through words that do not need to be there. Yeah. Now, I just have a few words of general advice, and you're not going to find these in any grammar books at all. These are sort of tricks of the trade, things that I've learned about editing. Simple. Look out for long sentences. Yeah? What does a long sentence often mean? It's wordy. Yeah?
Excessive.
It could be excessive. Yeah, look out for them. If you have a long sentence there, does it need to be long? Am I repeating myself within the sentence itself? Here's another one. Again, you're not going to find this in any grammar book. Be suspicious of bunches of little words. put a bunch of little words together, it probably means you're convoluting the sentence of the sentence. And very often it's a sign of poor predication, and usually a sign that you're using the passive voice, that you're not quite sure of what your verb is going to be. So what do? You dump it into the passive voice and hope nobody pays any attention to what you're trying to say in the first place. Now, this is one that I think is crucial. You might actually find this somewhere else. How many of you do this? Do you read your work out loud? Do it. Why? It's amazing. It's an amazing skill. It's an amazing tip. It's an amazing strategy for success in university. Why would I want you to read out what you've written?
You hear your mistakes.
You hear them, because your ear is an awesome tool for picking out garbage, gobbledygook, wordiness. Our eyes, on the other hand, are quite accustomed to seeing it. When I read this sentence, first of all, can I actually read it without stumbling? Here's another tip. If you can't actually read your sentence without stumbling through it, there's a problem there somewhere. It might not be wordiness, it might be predication, it could be a number of things. It's telling your ear, saying, listen, man, look at it again. Watch out for repetition. There's another one. If you see a word repeated over and over and over again, what might be happening, this might be a sign that you're actually just repeating your ideas over and over again. You're not an essay should develop its argument, right, from beginning to end. It should be building, growing, becoming irrefutable. If you find on your revision, and again, this is where your ear comes in handy, you hear the same word over and over again, probably what's happening are two things. You're not varying your diction. Varying your diction is important. Not using the same word over and over again suggests to me that you're unimaginative, or, more importantly, that you're just repeating your ideas rather than developing your ideas. And last, and very important, try to resist the urge to be a brilliant stylist. And this is not easy to do, folks. Writing is hard. Ask anyone who writes for a living, like me. Writing is very, very hard, and because most of it's spent revising and realizing what you're saying in the end might not be all that important as you thought it was. So we go back to the drawing board. So our editing is a way of helping us to teach us ourselves if what we're saying in fact is valuable, important, enough to then share with an audience. It's much more important, especially, I think many of you are in first year university. It's very important to communicate as economically and as directly as you can, as plainly as you can. I can't emphasize that enough. Plain writing is always much better than writing that is trying to call attention to itself. Look how stylish I am. Look how stylish my prose is. I'm not saying that your writing isn't going to have its own style, but no matter what you do, this is what an English sentence is going to look like. A subject, a verb, and an object. Keep that in mind. Limit yourself. Think of writing maybe this phase in your career as an experiment, something that you need to be conscious about and work on and break down into its fundamental parts. And when you've mastered that, then your style will then develop. Your personal voice will develop. And your personal voice, who you are, is always going to come through much better in plain writing than in baggy, wordy writing, okay? Meaning is much more important than style. And that is really all I have to say.